Hi, everyone. I'm Keith Mathis. Welcome to 7 Minutes to PMP Mastery. We are a premier ATP, and today's video for the PMP exam is going to focus on the definition of done versus acceptance criteria. Now, for those of you who are looking at taking the PMP, these two categories sound very close. So we want to make sure we separate them and allow you to have a better chance at getting these correct. So when we talk about definition of done and acceptance criteria, let's go at it first off from the aspect of internal versus external. So a definition of done, let's say typically it's looking at it from an internal standpoint. It's created and maintained by the development team, ensure consistent completion and quality steps. And so you have control of that internally. Acceptance criteria would be external facing, defined by the product owner, the customer, or the stakeholders, and specify what makes the deliverable acceptable. But both of these sound very similar. I'll show you an example before we get off of the video today of what we're talking about. So a definition of done is a shared checklist used by the team to determine when work is fully completed. It ensures consistent quality, completeness across all deliverables. Key PMP concepts for this would be defined by the project team, applies to all the work items. It ensures quality standards and process completion, and it supports transparency and predictability. All those characteristics, not all of them will show up in every question, but some of those characteristics will show up in that question and allow you to realize they're talking about definition of done. The definition of done ensures that the work is fully complete, quality standards are consistently applied, and no unfinished work moves forward. And so that definition of done is going to anchor all of those three things. So let's look at some key difference here that's important for the PMP test. So the first off, let's look at scope. So acceptance criteria would be specific requirement or user story. Compared to the definition of done, it would be all the work items. If we look at focus, the acceptance criteria will be functional requirements. The definition of done would focus on completion and quality standards. Under owner, under acceptance criteria, you would have the product owner and stakeholders who would be the owner of the acceptance criteria. Under the definition of done, you'd have the development team. Under purpose, for acceptance criteria, determine if a requirement is acceptable. Under definition of done, determine if the work is finished. Under level, if you look at acceptance criteria, it's going to be at the requirement level. If you look at team level, definition of done, it's going to be at the team level. And then the PMP perspective, acceptance criteria will validate the deliverable, but in the definition of done for the PMP level, it will ensure the work completed. Now let's take a simple way to remember for the PMP exam. So a useful mental shortcut would be acceptance criteria. Did we build the right thing? Definition of done, did we build it correctly and finish all the work? Acceptance criteria evaluates requirements. Definition of done evaluates completion. Let me say it again. Acceptance criteria evaluates requirements. Definition of done evaluates completion. So acceptance criteria equals what the customer expects. Acceptance criteria are the specific conditions that a product, feature, or user story must meet to be accepted by the customer or stakeholders. They define what must be true for a specific requirement to be considered acceptable. Key PMP concepts for acceptance criteria. It's defined for individual requirements or backlog items. It's written from the perspective of the stakeholder or product owner. It's used during validation and acceptance. It's often tied to user stories. On the PMP exam tip, something that would help you, acceptance criteria helps determine whether requirements have been satisfied, whether the deliverable is acceptable to that customer, and whether the team should mark a backlog item off as complete. So that's very common on the test. So let's give you an exam type question. So a Scrum team is developing a new feature for a mobile banking application. The product owner confirms that the feature meets all the specified acceptance criteria, including successful login authentication, password reset capability, and account balance display. However, during the sprint review, a developer notes that the feature has not yet completed peer code review, automated testing, or documentation updates, which are required by the team before work can be considered finished. What should the project manager or Scrum Master conclude? A, the feature is complete because the acceptance criteria has been satisfied. B, the feature is incomplete because it has not met the team's definition of done. C, the feature should be accepted because the product owner approved the requirements. Or D, the acceptance criteria should be updated to include testing and documentation requirements. So take a moment and pick your answer. I'm getting ready to share it with you on the next slide. All right, you have your answer? I'm getting ready to share it. All right, B was your best answer. The feature is incomplete because it has not met the team's definition of done. Even though the acceptance criteria are satisfied, the work cannot be considered finished until the team's definition of done is met. The definition of done includes internal completion standards such as peer code review, automated testing, documentation updates, integration validation. Because these activities were not completed, the feature cannot be considered done. So that kind of gives you a little bit of allows you to get some insight into what that test question can feel like a little bit for that. Now, let me thank you so much for watching our video today. And so I hope it's been helpful as you looked at acceptance criteria compared to definition of done. If I can answer other questions for you, don't hesitate to email me. We do PMP boot camps every other month virtually. And so we'd love to have you in a boot camp, and go to our website. You can sign up for it, or if you want to ask some other questions, send me an email, okay? So thank you so much for watching the video. Hope you have a wonderful day. Bye now.